welcome to another episode of Tammy's Table. I want you to think about this. Think about the last house party that you went to or the last family gathering. And if you think about where all the action happens, it's in the kitchen at the table. So there's young people learning from their elders, there's elders sharing wisdom, and that is what we hope to do on Tammy's Table, and particularly around the idea of resilience. How do you bounce back from adversity? How do you get punched and stand up again?
Mm.
Which I know we've all been through. And I am super excited to have my good friend Candice Harper on the show today. So she's like candy, candy, candy. Um, So, Candy is a licensed and certified hypnotherapist and a relationship coach, and she specializes, I think this is super interesting.
Mm.
Her niche is helping high earning, influential women of color become irresistible to a mate for their soul. So, I'm hiring you immediately after the show.
I love it.
Tell me about gloat.
Yeah, so get your gloat, right? Your greatest love of all time. And so a lot of times people think when they think of the word gloat, like when someone's gloating, it's like, oh, I won over you. But there's this look, and I'm sure you've seen it. You can see it when you go to like social events and things like that. This look that women who are in a loving, healthy relationship get. And it's not in any way like I'm better than you, I won, or anything like that. But when we're in that place, and I've been in that place where we don't feel so good about our love life, and we come across a woman like that, it's almost like you can easily perceive it as a gloat, right? Because she just
Yeah,
looks so serene and happy, like a well-loved woman has just
yeah.
beautiful glow. And I was like, it's like a gloat. It's a gloat to someone who doesn't have it yet. But then once you have it and you get that gloat, it's almost like, women who are pregnant, they get that glow. Women who are
Mhm.
joyful, women who are happy, they have a certain kind of glow. And so I was like, this is a good sort of double meaning. Greatest love of all time, get your gloat. That's
I
the
love it. I
best.
love it. And I think, you know what? I don't think it's like a gloat. I think it's what we're aspiring to, right?
Sure,
Like
yeah.
you've achieved so much in your life. You've probably had broken relationships. I know I have.
Yeah.
And when you see women that are so happy like that, it just makes me happy. It
Yeah.
makes me want to do whatever they're doing, like get whatever they have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, okay. So we always talk about resilience on the show. We talk about like how you bounce back from adversity. How do you make yourself strong against like what might be coming?
Yeah.
And I love you, and I love that you're the love coach and a relationship coach. And I thought we could talk about resilient relationships. Like for me, that means like we're side by side through
Yeah.
the storm. Like
Yeah.
we got whatever's going on, I got you, as
Yeah.
long as you got me.
Yeah.
Um,
The
what
caveat.
are resilient relationships in your mind?
So I think of it like this, and it's as I'm evolving, right? First of all, we're all just sort of evolving into things and learning. So there's no absolutes. There's no absolute answer as far as what makes a relationship resilient. But I always say this, people talk about soulmates and they talk about wanting to be with someone they can sustain with. I think, first of all, you can't recognize your soulmate until you're looking back, right? You know how you see those couples on the news, they've been married for 65, 70 years. It's like they always say things like, well, we just took it one day at a time, or I didn't know we were going to be together this long, or the time went by so fast. We just believed in God. Like it's one of those things where you can't recognize your soulmate until you look backwards. So I say that to say, what that means as far as resilience. When you're at the other end, when you're at the beginning of it, when we get attached to this person has to be the person, it's almost counterintuitive to having a sustainable relationship. It's the idea of how do I take this day by day? How do I create day by day? And what causes resilience is a unified commitment. So if what I'm committed to is being in the moment, then all of a sudden I wake up one day and we've been together for 35 years. But if what I'm committed to is I'm going to be right next to you in 45 years. And that's what marriage often sets up for us, is that expectation, right? Like society sets up that expectation. And that's why there's so much divorce, that so many relationships do break down. I think what creates resilience is that willingness to have a commitment and just take it day by day, take it, week by week, month by month. And it sounds crazy because you start to think, well, what if you have kids and all of that? Like, I think even in that case, if you're not willing to just say, look, I'm going to be committed to what I'm committed to, which is joy, happiness, love, understanding, whatever, knowing that I can't always do it perfectly, but I'm just going to commit to it by moment. I can't think about 20 years from now because it doesn't exist, right? That's
I
what I
think
think about
that's
it.
so deep, Candy. It's so deep and it makes a ton of sense. But the way we're raised
Mm-hmm.
is to be aspirational.
Yeah.
Like as a young girl, like I'm not a young girl anymore, but as a young girl, I
Looking.
want to like find the love of my life
Yeah.
and spend the rest of my life with him or her,
Yeah. Yeah.
whoever it is. Um, that's a societal thing. Like we are literally raised to be thinking always in the future, not living in the moment.
Absolutely. 100%. And I think because it is a societal thing, it's like we think, that means we have to default to it, right? And that's sort of part of our journey, part of the journey of why we're here, I believe, is to be working towards unconditionality. No matter what the world has kind of laid on us, our journey is to move through it, heal it, transform it, change it, and become, right? And it doesn't mean that you can't have aspirations because you want to have something happen long term, but it's with the understanding that I don't have to control it. Like, I just have to be committed to what I know to do right now. And so if I'm willing to practice that, which none of us does it perfectly, it's a practice, right?
Yeah.
If I'm just in that awareness alone, I'm giving myself an opportunity to actually experience my aspirations. Whereas if I'm attached to my aspirations, it's almost like we stand in our own way.
I just generally feel like that is so much easier said than done.
Definitely. Which is
I
which is life, by the way. I always say this when people say something's easier said than done, that is life. Life is easier said than done,
You're right.
right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
also, okay, let me just stick with like this is how we were raised, right? Um, if you're told from like a child
Mhm.
that one day you're gonna meet like the man of your dreams
Mhm.
and the rest of your life is gonna be amazing, which is all about like forward thinking.
Yeah.
I think it would be really hard to be like in the moment. And I totally get you. I am down. Like I think it's really important to just live in the moment.
Yeah.
And not uh don't worry about tomorrow. Just worry about today. Just
Mm.
worry about right now.
Yeah.
Um, how does that affect relationships?
Yeah. So let's go to the word worry about, right? Right off the bat. Let's worry about none of it. Now we're taught the opposite. You're 100% right. And it is definitely a challenge to be able to shift the mindset to there's nothing for me to worry about, right? The only thing that I have control over is my perception of everything. Like I don't know if you listen to Myron Golden, but he talks about he's like a biblical business sort of guru, and he talks about how reality is reality no matter what. Like what exists is what exists no matter what. But what most of us are experiencing is our perception of it, right? So if my
Right.
perception of reality is that this, that, or the other thing has to be in place in order for me to be okay, in order for me to be happy, then I'm going to have an experience of this, that, and the other thing because there's so much about this, that, and the other thing that I don't have control over. And yes, I've been raised that I'm supposed to aspire to being forever with someone, and that's the only, possibility. Which is why a lot of people who don't necessarily have that experience end up, feeling like they're not enough, or something's wrong with them, or I'm not fitting into the rules that I was taught, the rules of the game that I was taught. And so, once we start to experience the resistance and the emotional problems that come up around not being able to fit into what society taught me,
Mm-hmm.
that's life's opportunity saying, well, what else is there? What else is possible? Right? How else can I approach life separate of what I was told I had to do, based on not anything that's real for me, just what society says. And when I start to ask that question, then I get to start to explore that maybe I don't have to fit into these rules. Maybe it's not going to go the way that, someone else says it was supposed to go for me. And a lot of times those people are telling us how it's supposed to go. It didn't go that way for them either.
Yeah.
You know what
Be
I
careful.
mean?
Be careful who you get your advice from.
Exactly. I
Like
mean,
you've been
my
married
parents were
three
married.
times.
What's that?
It's like you've been married three times. Like,
Yeah, but even
why
so,
are you giving
like
me
my
advice?
parents were married for what, over 55 years? And I look at their relationship and I honor that they were able to do that, but they weren't happy together. And their expectation for me was to do the same thing,
Do the same thing. My
right?
parents have been married for, I think, 60 years.
Yeah.
They're still married.
Yeah.
I'm
Are
like,
they madly in love with each other? Are they like
I think they are now. I gotta tell you, like,
grew
for
into it?
most of my life, I'm like, they're just enduring this
Yeah.
because they have four kids.
Yeah.
Um, but they've both been sick over the last year,
Well,
like really sick. And they've been totally like incredibly there for each other, which says to me that there is like a river of passion running under like that relationship
yeah.
that we just don't see externally.
Or yeah, or more importantly, just a friendship that they've developed, like a connection that they've developed because of everything they've been through. That bonding that
Yeah.
happens because of everything we've done together, right? And I think
Yeah.
my generation and my parents' generation, that's kind of the expectation. But we are in a world now, and I feel like our generation is the first that has sort of allowed ourselves, we're like the therapy generation, allowed ourselves to actually kind of go our own way emotionally. We're in a world now where you do get to choose the path, right? We
Right.
can buck up against the patriarchy. We don't have to go with the old traditions. We don't have to practice the same old, religious traditions. We don't have to practice all the same old stuff. And just the knowing of that opens up the possibility for navigating things differently. So if I want to live in the moment, even though that's not what I was taught, I get to navigate differently just because I'm living in an era where it's easier to go against what society says than it used to be.
That's so incredibly true. I
Yeah.
was talking to my son, he's 23. Um, and we were laughing. Like I have now I'm accruing my dating stories because they're
Yeah.
all mostly hilarious.
Are you writing them down? I hope.
Yes, I'm writing them down. And I'm writing a book that's called Here's Why We Swipe Left.
I love it.
So I told my son, and he's dating. We're all, I don't know, I have older kids, so everybody's out
Everybody's
there.
dating.
He was like, "What's the story?" I was like, "I don't need a man.
Yeah.
I want a man."
Yeah.
And that is like extremely different. Uh and to your point, like our parents have been together for, decades.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
By I think being good friends is I think like really important.
Hmm.
It's a really important starting point. Um but I want to ask you like how do you build a relationship that withstands time?
Yeah.
Whether it's like looking at our parents or my grandparents were all together until they died also. Like I don't know anything about like being an older woman being single.
Yeah.
It's not what I've seen in my life.
Yeah, I got you. And I think that here's the thing, it's a different way than they did it. And I think that's what we're navigating as a society now, right? Because it's rare that people stay together that long anymore. Like I feel like they're the last generation of people who can say I've been with the same person since, high school in such large numbers. Obviously, people still do it. But I think it's this, and this is not from a place of I'm absolute 100% knowing, because here I am, I'm on my third major relationship, right? My third committed partnership, and I'm 52. So I wouldn't say to you, here's it. Like my older sister, she's been married for almost 40 years, and they've, had a great relationship. They've raised two kids. And I can say what it looked like for me from the outside for how they did it. But I will say this, I think that no matter what, whether it's a love relationship, a business partnership, even a family relationship that you want to sustain health with, It's the understanding of how important it is to be able to communicate, and not just communicate, but to be able to listen, right?
Mm,
I think that if you get to a point with a person, even in a friendship, where nothing is off limits to talk about, right? Nothing is
yeah,
off limits to talk about. You can sustain a relationship with anybody that way. And you can allow the relationship to move in and out the way it needs to and breathe in a way that when you can't speak your mind, when you can't be fully self expressed, it starts to sort of poison and toxify the relationship. So that's what
interesting.
I think is the key.
What talk about the poison?
So think about any time. I mean, I know I've been in relationships where I felt like I couldn't be fully self-expressed. I was in a really abusive relationship, almost 10 years ago. And so, I would find myself where if I said certain things, it might trigger something in them, or I knew that it was going to mean, a big fight, or if I, shared the whole story about something, they were going to turn it into something else. In my mind, that was my perception of the person. So because we couldn't have clear communication, I would have to find other ways to kind of do things the way that I wanted to do them. And then so we weren't working together. It's like we were at odds with each other as far as the relationship was concerned because he had one agenda, I had another agenda. So it had no there was no space for it to grow together because we were so busy kind of trying to survive and make our own way. And that's what doesn't work. Like, I think the only way that you can have something work with someone is if you have an agreed partnership and both are committed to it being a partnership. Like, we're working on this thing together, right?
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you can't be fully self-expressed. Like, I got to be able to tell you, you know what's going on with me right now? I'm not feeling as sexually attracted to you as I was before, but what can we do to work on that? Or that thing that you said or that thing you keep saying that's making me feel like, whatever it's making me feel like. And I'm not saying it for you to fix it, but let's talk about why you feel that way and why we're seeing it this way. Why are we not getting along right now? What's going on with us? Like, that willingness to be able to just have open dialogue and not make everything so serious that it can't be spoken. We have these secrets
Yeah.
that we never want to tell. I'll tell you one right now because I had a very fortunate thing happen in that
You're about to tell us a secret.
I'm going to tell you a secret right
All
now
right, let's go.
that I shared with my partner that I never shared with my last partner, which I think was part of the poison in the relationship as well, and often didn't share with people who I just was friends with because I had a lot of shame around it. So those secrets that we have shame around. So I had an enormous student loan. Now, student loan debt. Never defaulted on it, was trying to pay into it. The interest was accruing. I had so much shame around that student loan debt. I mean, there's a million reasons why I had it, whatever, the story I was telling myself in my head. And, by the time like I finally got it forgiven, it was six figures. Like, it was just a huge student loan debt. And when I would be in partnership, especially with that abusive relationship, I would never mention it. Like, I wouldn't talk about it because I felt like that would be a tool for shame. Like, if he wanted to make me feel bad, that's a way that
Hmm.
he could make me feel bad. And so
Hmm.
things like that, when you're in a partnership with someone, there's no room for possibility because there would be no room for him to say, well, what are some solutions we can make up? Since we're in this together, maybe we both can build something that'll make enough money and we'll get rid of the debt. Like, there's no room for any of that because I'm busy being shameful and not telling, what's really going on with me. Whereas with this relationship, and what helped is that it got forgiven, but with this relationship, right, I was able to come clean and just be
Thanks,
like,
Biden.
yeah. So this is what's going on. And I look at it in hindsight and I'm like, you know what? There were many opportunities where if I wasn't feeling shameful about that thing and I was fully self-expressed, I probably would have caused partnership rather than, just no possibility because I'm not sharing myself.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Mm.
Um,
I love your questions.
not being fully not being fully you is real.
Hmm.
And I, in my head, like, I'm like, would this guy mind if I jumped on the bed in the hotel room? Because that's my favorite thing to do. I
Yeah.
jump on beds in hotel rooms.
Do you?
Um, but then there's some stuff like I just don't want you to know.
Yeah.
It's not about being fully expressed. Like, I literally, like, I just feel like how is this going to contribute to our relationship by me telling you this?
Mm.
So, I know you're about to come at me.
Yes.
So, yeah, yeah, you're about to come at me,
I
but
know
like
it.
some stuff, like here's like a very little thing.
Mm.
So, I had premature twins,
Okay.
and why they were in the hospital, I had to put my dog down.
Mm.
Like literally, it was like they were born, my grandmother died, and then a week later, like I had to put my dog down.
Mm.
Like, I don't want you to know that, Candy. It
Yeah.
was so painful. I cried my eyes out all night long because I was alone, like with my kids.
Yeah.
Um, do you feel like there's room for information you don't need to know because it destroys me?
Um, Here's the thing about that, because I do understand the energy of wanting to keep certain things close to the vest, right? Especially if you have a lot of emotion around it. But the invitation is to explore where there needs to be healing and what you're telling yourself about those things that has them destroy you. Now, let me qualify that, because it's like people might say, "Oh, obvious, it's the loss, it's the grief." Right? And the loss
Oh,
and the
it's
grief,
deeper.
what's that?
Oh, it's way deeper. It's loss, grief,
Is
the
there some
loss of
guilt?
unconditional love.
Yeah. Is there some guilt around those stories?
No, like it all happened like right there. Like I was getting divorced.
Yeah.
Um, because I was having the twins. They were born prematurely. I was in the hospital. And then I came out and like, really,
Yeah.
Queen, you couldn't like you couldn't be strong, so I have to deal with you in dealing with all of this.
Yeah.
It was just super sad.
Yeah.
And I know it's just a dog, but I loved her.
But do you know that just in the telling of that, there's so much that I have just now learned about you in this moment and who you are as a human being. And you and I are friends, but every time I learn a detail about like that about you, it increases my affinity because it's human. It's a human story that I can understand. I can understand the loss, the grief, the pain. I can understand the love that you had. And it strengthens the relationship that you and I have as a friendship. So it's not that you are obligated to tell everything to someone that you're getting to know, but it's that those parts of our life that are painful or vulnerable or special or surprising, that when we're willing to share those things, we allow that person an opportunity to get close to us. When we're not
Mm,
willing to share the things that mean the most, and the reason that memory sticks with you so much is because of the emotion surrounding it, right? Without
right.
all that emotion, what you're not in relationship with someone. Without passion, without your vulnerability, your humanity, you're not relating with someone. And that is a very relatable story that you just told. So it's not that you have to tell it, but why not? As you're getting to know someone, this is one of the most painful memories that I have in my life. That's a conversation that you get into when you're getting to know someone and you're growing in intimacy. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it's um safer
To not?
to not.
Uh-huh.
Especially if you don't know somebody. Like
Yeah,
I just told you, like I'm in the dating scene right now. I'm like out there dating.
yeah,
I'm like, do I want to share like my most intimate secret with this guy? Like that's pretty much what's in my brain when I'm like on a date. I'm like, oh, I don't like him that much. Like I
yeah.
don't like him that much to tell him this. And the dude barely like left a tip. That's a whole nother story.
But do you get that that is the litmus of, when you're being discerning about who you want to date? Like we often think that we're supposed to be matching them to a list, but just the fact that your gut and your body didn't say, I want to share myself with this person, that's your litmus that they're not your person. But your person, I don't think you're going to be able to not share yourself because you're going to want to so much, and that's how you know that you're dealing with it. Like I always say, it's your intuition, it's your inner self that knows better than anybody else. Like whatever advice, I just did a TikTok about it. As a coach, I'm not an advice giver. I'm a guide to your inner knowing, which is your gut right now. And your future self, like you could go to your future self and say, future self, what should I be doing now in order to have this great love life that you already have? And your future self will say to you, this is exactly what, here are your steps, right?
Just
So what's that?
keep going.
So your gut, if your gut says, this is not the person to tell my story about, to tell my story to, your gut knows what it's talking about.
Yeah.
But if it is, if it's saying, you know what, I'm feeling comfortable enough to tell my story, I want to share it, right? Then you do. It's not something that you wield and kind of use, as a tool. Like, do I tell, you're not good enough for my story? You're not. It's like your gut will let you know if you feel safe. And I always say with women in particular, that feeling of safety, that feeling of stability, a genuine one, not the one where it's like, I want a relationship so bad, so let me just ignore that I don't really feel good, or like I've got this nervous feeling. That genuine feeling of, it's like homeostasis. It's like, like this is it. That is your litmus. That's how you know. You're like, this is the one. This is the one for now. And we'll see. We'll moment by moment. And we'll see
I
how it
think there's equal power also in saying, like, I've been really good at telling guys, like, you are not for me.
yeah.
And I think there's like an equal power in both, like being comfortable enough to
Yeah.
talk about like your those stories that are hard to share. But also being like, listen, dude, you wore a red flannel to our date. Like, I don't know, man. You are not I don't wear evening gowns every day, but you are not for me.
Well, that's a whole other thing. I have a whole thing that I do in my coaching program around, what we consider to be red flags, because I think we're in like red flag society, right? So, women will be like,
Absolutely.
everything's a red flag. He had, salad dressing on his chin. That was a red flag. Like, there is a way to sort of get out of that
Yeah,
energy of that I have to be looking for the red flags, because the red flags, if I allow them to show up, the genuine ones, they will
right.
happen organically. It's just that willingness to keep listening to myself, looking for
Yeah.
alignment. I don't know about a plaid shirt. If that, it's not
Listen,
the
we were
greatest
in
fashion
like one
choice.
of the chicest restaurants in
Were
town.
you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Hey, tell me about your coaching. Tell me about your like programs. Like, how do people reach out and touch you?
So there's a couple different ways. The best way is to go to my website, CandiceHarperLoveCoach.com. But right now I have two things going on. I have the hypnotherapy, which is often part of the coaching. And this is about life's next chapter. So, I can hypnotize around love and those blocks that we were talking about, like the emotional blocks, not wanting to talk about and share yourself. And I can hypnotize around physical things, like somatic things that happen in the body, and the ways that those can be a connection to whatever traumas, whatever things that might be keeping us from being able to be intimate or move to a next chapter. I've been working with women around becoming empty nesters, having certain physical ailments. There's a whole menu. If you go to the page, it's CandiceHarperLoveCoach.com/hypnotherapy. And
Okay.
then around the coaching, I have a 12-week intensive program, which is where I take you through, women come to me and they say, well, I want to meet my person. That's how you get your gloat, right? Greatest love of all time. And I take you through my process as far as it's an accountability setup, and also weekly exercises for when blocks come up. Because a lot of times, especially a woman like yourself, it's like we date, or we'll say, this is what I want, but we don't put any sort of like structure around it, right? So like each week, if I'm making it a point to practice partnership, one of the exercises I might have someone do is, you have to call five, whatever gender you're interested in. You're interested in men, you have to call five men in your life and show appreciation. And there's different pillars. Show them appreciation unattached. Don't expect anything back. You're just gonna, and it doesn't have to be men you're dating. It could be your own son. It could be an ex. It could be your cousin. It could be your brother, whatever. We go through those exercises so you start to get into that space of learning how to be a partner for the partner that you want. Like we would say, what you seek is seeking you. In order to be that partner, you have to be a space for it. So that's the practice for the 12 weeks. I hold you accountable for it. By the end, you meet your mate. And then if you want to continue on, I do concierge to help, develop the relationship. But
So, are you saying at the end of those 12 weeks, you're guaranteeing me a man?
Well, I can guarantee you a man. I can't guarantee you your soulmate. 'Cause no one goes through it and like doesn't meet someone. Like you always will meet someone for sure. But you know, whether it's somebody who truly aligns with what you're looking for the, 45, 50, 60 years down the road, that's something, like I said, you can only tell in hindsight.
Oh my God, you're so awesome. You're
I love
so awesome.
it. As are you.
Keep hope alive, Jesse. Keep hope alive.
Always.
All
Always.
right. Listen, thank you for being here. I'm not kidding. I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna become a client
All right,
'cause
let's do
I'm
this.
sick of all of this.
Yeah.
And we could document the whole thing, which would be pretty hilarious.
Do you want, let's do it. I'm
I'm
down.
totally down for documenting the journey.
All right. All
All
right.
right. So, everybody, thank you so much. I will see you back here next Monday at noon for another episode of Tammy's Table. Have a great week.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.